Welcome to Business Intelligence. Today we have a very special guest, my friend, Kenneth Blue. He's an expert in reverse mortgages, and he's also a political and business writer for many newspapers here in South Florida. Welcome, Kenneth. How are you?
Fine. Thank you for asking me to join you.
Oh, no. It's a pleasure to have you. You are a wealth of wisdom and understanding and experience. And here at Business Intelligence, we like drinking from those type of fountains.
Thank you.
Definitely. Listen, tell us about what you do.
Well, let me just go back about 6 months. I decided at the young age of 81 that I was going to start taking it easy. And after 6 months, my wife said, "Would you please get out of the house?" So I went back to work. My background, I think you know, I started out at Wharton, class of 55, which is almost an irrelevant age now. I've been in banking my whole life. But when I got to the retirement age, I shifted from commercial banking to mortgage banking. Typically FHA, Fannie Freddie type products, institutional lending. And I sort of migrated into the area of reverse mortgages. I think maybe as I got older, I knew more people my age were interested in that special form of financing. And I joined about 5 months ago and a New Jersey company that's licensed in 14 states, including the District of Columbia, and I'm running their reverse mortgage division for the state of Florida.
I see. So you remain young at heart.
I hope my wife and you agree on that.
Well, we hear about reverse mortgages all the time on TV. We read about it in the papers. We see ads. But what is a reverse mortgage?
It's less complicated than people feel. Basically, a reverse mortgage is just what the word mortgage says. You own a property, or you're going to purchase a property. You don't have, or you don't wish to part with 100% of the purchase price, so you use a mortgage to finance the difference between your down payment and the purchase price. A reverse mortgage is the same thing. The only difference is on a reverse mortgage, you don't make monthly payments. Instead of making payments, the interest is accrued and added to the balance, so that as in a regular mortgage where every month when you make a principal and interest payment, the balance goes down a little bit, on a reverse mortgage, it does just the reverse. The balance goes up a little as we add the interest that you would have paid to the principal sum. So therefore is where the basic concept is: the younger you are, the less money you can borrow. The older you are, the more money, because you have less years to accrue interest.
Most certainly. And you are in the wealth preservation stage of your life.
That is correct.
And people in the wealth preservation stage of their life should consider a reverse mortgage in what kind of circumstantial reality?
About 3-4 months ago, I met with a few friends of mine that are certified financial planners. And we asked the question: a person through their life while they were working opens up various tax-sheltered retirement programs. And then when they get to the retirement age, instead of putting it in, they start taking it out. Rather basic concept. So the question is, what could you do to prolong the time before you have to start heavily hitting your retirement fund, and leave the money in so that it can continue to accrue interest tax-free? So we came up with the concept: if you reach 62, instead of taking your money out, maximizing your withdrawals from your retirement fund, you get a reverse mortgage, and you minimize, to conform to federal requirements, your deductions from your pension. So you fill the gap in with a reverse, and by this time your pension has grown because of the accumulating interest, and in the end you have a far greater retirement fund.
Most certainly. So a reverse mortgage can be not only a wealth preservation instrument, it could be, correct me if I'm wrong, also a means whereby you can transfer wealth. You can protect more wealth over a period of time. Is that correct?
Well stated. Well stated.
Yes?
Yes.
And what are the concerns of the average potential client? What are the objections that you get to what you have to offer on a daily basis?
Well, you have to start out with the fact that there is no product in the world, whether it's an automobile or an insurance policy or a suit of clothes, that's right for everyone. And unfortunately...
So your stuff is tailor-made?
I don't know if this one is or not. I don't think it is. But unfortunately, a lot of the TV commercials, and I'm not panning anyone or knocking anyone, but they seem to give the impression that this is right for every senior. And that's not true, because there are many circumstances under which a person should not be invading the equity in their homes. But in the main, matter of fact, a cute story. May I? A cute story.
Of course.
I had a lady who was, I think she was 78 or 79, and she was in the office, and she asked one of our people about the program, and she says, you know, I have a son, and wouldn't it be appropriate if I kept the home free and clear so that he can inherit it? So I happened to walk in on the room, and I said, let me ask you a question, ma'am. You're how old, 78? It's kind of an awkward question, but when do you think you're going to pass from the earth? And of course, when you're almost 80, you never say 81. She said, I don't know, 85, 90. And all of a sudden she looked at me and smiled and started to laugh. Her son's going to be 70 years old. And by that time, he has done his own thing.
Certainly.
So my concept is when you are earning, you're building equity. When you retire, you use the equity to supplement your income. Because no one can live on Social Security today.
Most certainly.
And even if you just add a modest pension, with inflation being what it is, you need to supplement your income.
Most certainly.
Therein lies the concept of a reverse mortgage.
And what you're giving our audience in this day is knowledge. And in this program, we've said that the more you learn, the more you earn, the more you can return. So that's why we invite people.
That.
Yes,
I like that.
That's why we invite people like you to keep us abreast of things that can add value, not only to our financial life, but to our decision making at large. And on that note, I want you to comment on the state of the current economy. We were speaking about Washington and gridlock and all of that. But the other day we were having a conversation. I like having coffee with Kenneth because he has a way of seeing things that is very refreshing.
And simplistic.
We have to give things a kiss, keep it simple, right? We have to speak not only from mind to mind, but from heart to heart. But going back to politics, we mentioned that there's a big divide here in the United States between left and right. And we acknowledge that in order for a bird to fly, it needs both a right wing and a left wing. But we acknowledge the fact that the brains are in the middle. Who are the brains in the middle in the political arena?
Do you know what is so funny? I have to tell you this. I have quoted you 3 or 4 times about the left wing and the right wing and the brain in the middle. It is so real and so easy to understand. It makes all the sense in the world. Who is the middle today? I would say from the RNA point of view, Governor Christie would certainly qualify, even though he's...
That's the elephant in the room.
That's the most unliked Republican in Republican circles, which is kind of funny, because he's probably one of the few people that could return the White House to the Republican Party. If an election was today, I would say so. The Democrats, they have a harder time reaching the center, I think, than Christie does. But I would certainly say that the former First Lady would probably do a fairly good job at it. Although some of the Mideast politics problems may have tarnished her a little bit.
I see. And
now we have a Secretary of State that seems to be doing some successful negotiations between Palestine and Israel.
Certainly.
And I think his image is certainly coming back up.
And if the former Secretary of State is elected to power, we're going to have an interesting first gentleman in office as well. With that note, we will be right back. We have more to talk about with Kenneth Blue, a very enlightened individual who has taken some time out of his very busy schedule to share with us some nuggets of wisdom. Don't move. Welcome back to Business Intelligence. We are here with Kenneth Blue, a man that has been through the motions in the financial services industry since The 1950s, kind of?
1957.
It hasn't changed at all, has it?
Just got a little more expensive.
It's still about other people's money, isn't it?
That's what it's all about. That's all.
But
and how to share in it.
Most certainly. And it's more than anything else about protecting people's present and future. Correct. Seriously speaking. And that is something that I took to heart during my days as a stockbroker. I always used to tell my clients something that Francis Bacon used to say. Seek not proud riches, but seek those that thou mayest get justly, use soberly, distribute cheerfully, and live contentedly. And on that note, I would like to ask you the question of what is there a need for in leadership, both at the corporate and political level here in America? What is lacking?
You know, I have an opinion on that. It's kind of interesting. And it's funny, the Japanese seem to approach that subject a lot different than America. In America, the whole concept is the next quarter. It doesn't matter whether the company is going to go down the drain in 1 year, but what have you done in the quarter? The Japanese historically have, well, since the Second World War, have always had the long vision on their corporations. Whether it's worked out successfully or not, I don't know. But I think too much emphasis is put on what's the stockholder's position, what's the value of your stock, what's the value of your options, and not what is the long-term growth of the corporate world. And I think if we could adjust our thinking in that way, we'd be way ahead of where we are today.
Most certainly, most certainly. So we should have a longer time horizon and not acquiesce before the microwave mentality that is put before us by the mainstream.
May I say indubitably?
Yes, most certainly,
with
please.
grand verisimilitude.
Most certainly, most certainly. Now, how do we do that? Because there are so many companies, and your company is in the process of expanding, now I understand, but there are so many companies out there that are publicly traded, that have to respond to shareholders, and that are very worried about what is going to come out in terms of information in the next quarter. And they want it to be information that will add value to their stock. How do we go beyond worrying about the numbers and kind of adding value to the core, if you will?
Well, to start with, if I knew the real answer to that, I'd be sitting where you are, not where I'm sitting. I would be preaching to the world.
I see.
I think one of the problems, and I don't want to sound too liberal when I say this, and I don't mean it that way, but I think part of the problem is compensation for senior management. In the last 5 or 6 years, it's the multiples between what even the second level of management down is earning. It's become so disproportionately greater that the stockholders are starting to say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Some of that money belongs to us, because if we hadn't invested, you would not have a job. And so let's start looking at that. And of course, that would start pulling some, maybe just a little bit of profit back in. But I think even more of that, it would start people realizing that, because until you stop saying to your broker, only put me in stock that's going to, as we've seen in the last year, start doubling, will we ever be able to stretch out our horizons? And I really don't know how. I think maybe it's just going to take another whole level, another whole generation to accept that. Because right now, the people my age, all they're demanding is, what's your return on investment? And if I sell, how much better is it than when I bought?
Yes, but we have to kind of consider the fact that we have pictures and then we have motion pictures. And if you have an ROI now that is X, it doesn't mean that the motion picture is good quality throughout. But if you buy good quality, and good quality doesn't do well today, if you hang on to it, it will perform over the long run. That's what we see with companies that have shown good performance over the years, such as Johnson & Johnson, GE, and what have you. Although GE had its troubles and controversies, but it's one of those companies, right?
But how would you rate General Motors and Eastman Kodak?
Well, I'm going to articulate my opinion. It's not necessarily well researched at this point because I've been out of the stock market for a couple of years. But I think that General Motors was and is a great company. I think that its human capital, although capable, got too immersed in things that didn't really lead to the best interest of the company. I think unions have a role to play in preserving, the human capital and advocating for the best interests and the like. But I think they got a little out of bounds in their demands, and that affected the company to a great degree. Other than that, I think General Motors is a great company.
Do you think maybe they focused too much on the short term and didn't realize that the long term wasn't there for them? Because at one time, Detroit produced 80% of the automobiles in the entire world.
And I think that they rested in the laurels a little too much. Because I don't know if you remember back in the 70s, and I don't want to bore our audience, but this is something to take into consideration when it comes to the automotive industry. Back in the 70s, Toyota was given countervailing duties by the U.S. government because we were preventing them from exporting to the United States. And you know what they did with those countervailing duties, Kenneth? They set up manufacturing facilities here in the States.
In the United States.
Yes. We didn't want to compete with Toyota, and now we're falling victims to their core competency and what has to do with efficiency and effectiveness.
But maybe they created employment too.
They created employment too.
In Tennessee, it's better than the minimum wage at McDonald's, with all due respect to McDonald's.
Most certainly.
I mean, Eastman Kodak was the same. The reason I asked Eastman Kodak is I was reading something the other day where they were talking about they were so short-sighted on trying to make good quarters that they didn't realize that the whole industry was changing. And they, instead of having profits today, they should have plowed some of that back into staying in the changes in the photography market.
Yes.
And Kodak wouldn't be where they are today. So
there's a great lesson to be learned from Kodak. I think that a great company doesn't necessarily adhere itself to one product, but it adheres itself to one vision. I think that we have to be flexible like the wind when it comes to our preferences and what we offer to the public. Now, we have to be solid like a rock when it comes to our mission, to our vision, and to our purpose, our culture, if you will, as a company. Yes, I think that's what differentiates the good from the great, to quote Jim Collins. Yes?
You're good at quotes.
Most certainly. Now, Kenneth, let's ground this.
Right.
We've talked a little bit about the economy and politics, but going back to reverse mortgages, yes, the economy has recovered, if you will. It has been a slow recovery, but in general terms, it has recovered. The real estate market has recovered. Interest rates in the reverse mortgage world are in the neighborhood of?
Well, there's two types of products. You have the fixed rate and the adjustables.
Okay.
The adjustables are attached to the 1 month LIBOR and a margin. So right now they're about 2.875.
Okay.
And your fixed is a little over 5.06. So the rates are pretty high for government guaranteed paper, but not out of the range of the competition.
It's
for
still
your
sensible.
Conventionals, yeah.
It's still sensible.
Yeah.
Okay, so people are interested in what you've said. Now, what are the action steps moving forward?
The action steps.
Yes. How do they execute on this information?
My apologies.
How do they execute on this valuable information that you've shared with them?
Well, first of all, reverse mortgages are only originated by FHA-approved lenders. There are
a lot of sharks out there in reverse mortgages?
I wouldn't want to use the word sharks because there was a time when a mortgage broker with a $500 license and no capital could originate reverse mortgages, and they were more prone to weave tales that really weren't true. FHA eliminated all of that. Now you have to be an FHA-approved lender, and by the end of next year, we're going to find that the minimum capitalization is over $4 million. So there aren't too many small companies anymore that are in the mortgage business. And there's a lot of consolidations going on right now in the industry. So you tend to have a bigger asset, and you tend to control a little better what people are saying in the marketing of the product. Notwithstanding that, a lot of people get on television and portray it as being the panacea, the answer to all financial problems for seniors, which of course it isn't. But if a senior finds themselves, like most of them, trying to live on Social Security income, which today is an impossible task, and they're living in a home that has a lot of equity, they can do two things. They can refinance with a reverse mortgage, which will pay off their current mortgage and will generate cash. That cash can be taken either in a lump sum at closing, or it can be taken in monthly installments. Now, a lot depends upon the individual, because if you take someone who's just passing into retirement, they're in their middle 60s, late 60s, and they still have 2 car loans and a Bank of America credit card and a couple of other credit cards, maybe $20,000. They could refinance, eliminate a mortgage payment, pay off their credit cards, and then take the balance of the money and convert it into a monthly supplement.
So not only is this a wealth preservation and wealth transfer strategy, it can also be a strategy for financial consolidation.
That is correct.
Beautiful.
Said well.
How can our public get in touch with you?
786-247-0547.
And what's the name of your company?
It's Acre Mortgage and Finance, Inc.
Beautiful. And you said you have a partnership with a firm in New Jersey under the same name?
Yes, it is their company.
Beautiful.
I run their reverse mortgage division for the state of Florida.
Beautiful. And how many years in the market already?
Myself?
Yes.
Oh my gracious. Let's see if I can figure that one out. I started in 1957. I'll let you do the arithmetic. You're the finance genius.
This man is young at heart. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
Final words of wisdom for our audience in this holiday season, in this Christmas season, and the new year that is about to materialize in a couple of weeks.
Let me tell you the advice I give to every senior. When you're your age, when you're older, 40, 50, if you make a mistake, you have the time to rebound. When you're in your 70s, your 80s, and 90s, the oldest person we made a reverse mortgage to is 97. When you're that age, if you make a hasty error, you'll never recover. So my advice, and there's a lot of mortgage people out there that right now saying, I wish she wasn't saying this, but my advice is go slow, examine it, make sure you understand it, and that it's appropriate for you, and then proceed if it's appropriate. But I just hate to see people make a big mistake and they'll never recover from it.
I think we can put Kenneth Blue's wisdom right next to that of Ronald Reagan. Trust but verify, in a sense. I don't know if you like that, but it sounds like trust but verify.
I loved Ronald Reagan. Unfortunately, he's no longer a Tea Party member.
I see, I see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Kenneth Blue. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a pleasure being with you.
You're going to have to come back and share with us some more knowledge and wisdom and understanding.
As famous people would say, invite me and I shall be here.
Certainly. Beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much. We'll see you next time.